Okay, bro.
Yes, sir.
Who are you?
My name is Milo Matthieu. Um, Grew up, born in Los Angeles. Family's from Haiti. Grew up in Los Angeles. Moved here when I was young, in the '90s, and pretty much grew up in New York since then. Yeah.
I see that you're an artist. Your studio's in here. You know, what got you started as an artist?
What got me started as an artist is a great question. I would say the first thing that happened to me was in college. I just kind of found myself surrounded with a lot of artistic, creative people, and I think that's what kind of sparked the interest of me wanting to be an artist. I mean, I grew up with art all around the house. My parents always got us involved and went to the museums as kids. So my parents are definitely big advocates in the arts and the music realm. So I always kind of had that sense of interest into it. But when I grew up, when I went to college, I was able to really kind of tap into other individuals that were focused on, whether it was clothing, music. No one was really painting at the time or anything like that, but it was more like photos, photography, clothes, music, and how all those kind of like came together, especially in Queens at the time. But so once that happened, I kind of started working in music, really enjoying that, and when I transferred to a school and I wanted to major in music production, and that was kind of like my first love into creativity. And music still is a huge passion of mine, but it was at that moment when I started to do some visual work for some musicians, friends that were around me, and that's when I realized it was through photography mainly, and that's when I realized how much I loved the visual arts. And then from that, during my thesis as my senior year in college, I ended up wanting to bring a different element to my photography, and I was doing a lot more street photography and just shooting my friends, like just being menaces around the city. And what I thought was like maybe I could just like paint and collage the photos. So then I started painting and collaging some of my photographs after I printed them out, and that's what I did for my thesis project. And from that point on, it was just kind of like hooked, and I was doing a lot more collage mixed media work up until probably like 2019, 2020, and then that's when I just started to just kind of lean more towards the full-on paintings. And as you see around the studio, I do still kind of do some type of collage work, but it's more about canvas on canvas and painting as opposed to the photo element that used to be more present. But yeah, that's kind of how it really got started, and then it just rolled from there,
Yeah.
And it's kind of been, as you see, it's just what it's been. So yeah.
If you could change one thing about the career path, what would you change?
So I think the one thing I would change about my career path is the same thing that also helped me to get to where I was today, which is kind of this catch-22 scenario that I'm in. But I think I think 2020, my career started to really pick up. I started to get some recognition and some gallery works and shows. And it's kind of been great ever since then. But I think the one thing I would have changed was maybe not putting out as much work as I did at the time. Because one thing about me is that anyone who knows me is that I'm going to always create, whether it's a show or anything, projects coming up, I'm going to always create paintings. So I think I wish since I was creating those works, maybe hold on to a little bit more as opposed to releasing them out into the world. Because one thing that's a crazy part of the industry I learned is that not everyone that buys a piece of work or painting or sculpture actually has the best interest or they have the same intention that you hope that they would have. As an artist, you have this romantic view that these people are buying works to hold on to them forever, but in reality that's not the case. Some people buy it, they have it 6 months, a year, and they're trying to like flip it or resell it or get rid of it, sell it back to the gallery and things like that, which is just kind of crazy to me. But everyone has their own I understand that some people go into this industry as investors and whatever the case might be, so I understand it's a multitude of things, but for me, it was definitely something I had to get used to, and if I had a chance, I would maybe hold on to a lot more of those works instead of just like selling them and making some money off of them. And because we kind of talked about it before about the money ideas, is not all money is great money, so I wish I could have had that foresight. But at the same time too, is that all those opportunities also helped me for my studio to grow at the same time. So it's one of those like confusing moments, but I think I could probably have held on to some. I could have done, maybe the same, could have gone the same distance without all of those sales. But at the time, it kind of felt right. And one thing I probably regret is that. Yeah.
Okay.
But things happen, life happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't like to hold on to regret too much. I'm here now, but like, if I had to change one thing, that would probably be it.
Okay.
But we out here, so we'll figure it out.
Do you feel that your level of creativity is still the same, or do you feel like it's been kind of like depleted from that experience where you've created a whole bunch of work, you gave it all out, and then people did what they did with it? Like, how has that impacted the way that you create?
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like, it's interesting. It's like, I wouldn't say that my creativity has been depleted. I'm still like really, I think, kind of in my, like, not even in my prime, like trying to work towards that, still experimenting, still challenging myself, still like, searching and trying to discover that inner, story that this is all supposed to tell. But I think at the time when it first started happening, maybe it was a little bit of a shock, and like it kind of took me off balance a little bit and made me realize that like my mentality had to change a little bit. But I also think it's a great lesson to know and a great lesson to learn, especially as a young artist. So I wouldn't say the creativity was depleted, but maybe my openness to the art world and the industry kind of was what was depleted. Definitely became a little bit more reserved, made sure that like the clients that I was working with understood my situation. And they do, that we would only kind of, deal to certain people that were going to actually appreciate the work as opposed to reselling them. And just like, I guess it just made me realize that I had to like move a little bit more differently, which isn't a bad lesson, you know what I mean? Especially as a young person, I'm not that young, but like, especially young in my career, just kind of like, it's a good lesson to learn. And it's kind of like one of those similar in life, kind of the same thing, you just gotta like, there's certain things you gotta be able to protect yourself from, and you can only know that if you go through it,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, that's very interesting. So, how do you now deal with your clients, right? Like, if somebody want to do a commission work, do you have like a list of requirements from the client in order for you to do the work? Like, what's that process like for you now?
Yeah, no, so I don't really necessarily personally have like a list of clients. A lot of the times now what I do is I usually will only deal with the clients through the galleries.
Okay.
I mean, unless I have like a good relationship with the client and they're like a reoccurring client and then that they want to come to the studio, I would always do that situation with them. Or just not even, as long as I have a good relationship with the person and I have like a trust and understanding with them, I would maybe do things out of the studio. But for the most part, I deal strictly with the gallery, and the gallery would deal with the clients because they have their whole system of vetting the person. They understand who the client is. Yeah. They won't, usually sell to anyone that's like that they don't know too much about, which also has its own downfalls too, because there's a lot of new collectors, and then you can't really always rely on the gallery to sell to certain collectors if they don't really know them. But then also, I also appreciate a new collector, and how that they're trying to build their collection. Maybe they don't have like the resume that these other like old collectors have. And
like buying a Rolex, right? Like you gotta be on the list.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so there is like that problematic part about it, but at times I just gotta make sure I protect myself and my studio more than anything. But usually the new collectors, though, if I usually could build a relationship with them, which I have, is a situation where I have, and we could do our own things, where I could just talk to the gallery and be like, oh, this is a new client, new collector, they're building their collection and they want to start, so can you give them first look on this show, to make sure they get covered, and that's something that I would probably do, but it's hard too. It's also with the galleries, like I'm not really in the room for those conversations all the time. So it's hard to, you just got to make sure you line up with people you trust and that that has your best interest, and not before their own, But yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Talk to me about the first painting you sold.
First painting I sold. Okay.
Right, like with the gallery,
With the
like
gallery,
your
okay.
first show, first painting.
Yeah.
What was that?
So the first painting I sold with the gallery was probably in like 2019 or 2018. I was working with this gallery, and I don't even remember the piece, to be honest, at this point. And I was hyped, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, first of all, the gallery even reaching out to me, I was hyped on, you know what I mean? Because at this point, it was pre-studio vibes. This was like working on a desk doing the mixed media work in my apartment in Bed-Stuy. And yeah, just a gallery. It was a gallery in London too, so that was even like kind of sick in my mind, you know. I was like, oh wow, like international work. Didn't really end up working out with the gallery eventually, but they did sell a few pieces of my work, which was pretty cool, and it kind of just got me even more, how would I say? I guess inspired, or just inspired, or there's a word I'm thinking of, I can't think of right now, but just like it activated something where I just was like, all right, bet, you know, like now I'm in it. Little did I know that things were just gonna plateau after that for a little bit, but it wasn't until like maybe 2020 I was doing a residency in LA, and things just really picked up from there, and that's when I realized, I was like, oh shit, like this is happening now, because it was just people were just like really into the work. For the most part, every piece that I would finish would, you know, find a home. So that's when I think 2020, when I realized, I'm like, oh wow, people are like really actually interested in the work. I always felt great about the work, and I always lead with a mentality that I know I love my work. I put enough time and energy into it that I feel like it's worth, you know, it's worth something. Not just in like monetary value, but it's just like worth its time to be shown, you know. So I always kind of hold on to that. So I think it's probably the only thing I can keep you going, keep you saying you got to know you're like doing it for a reason. I'm also big on manifestation. So it wasn't that the sales made me felt my worth, but it just made me realize like maybe this is my moment, that like people are gonna really start listening or start looking, and it was, and it's kind of been pretty nice ever since, you know. I mean, everything goes through waves, but everything's been pretty solid, and the relationships that came from that time have been really like just like fruitful, and also just on a personal level really special. So yeah.
I guess, when was the first time, was that the first moment that you like, yo, I'm an artist? Or like, when was that moment for you?
You know, in a weird, like, so it was like, I think I kind of always felt that even before I started making sales. There was a moment where I like was working, I was doing like more lighting work actually on shoots, and I always struggled because I was doing it freelance because I knew I could go home and paint, or like in collage and mixed media and stuff. So there was always this struggle with me kind of like realizing like, oh, I'm an artist, you know. It's like kind of hard. This is like maybe like, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, and I was like having trouble kind of seeing myself as an artist, you know, because even when I went to school and I was doing music, like that's when the ideas started to flow, but I never saw myself as a painter or like a fine art artist, you know. So it took some time to realize that, but it was around that time I had a friend that told me that you know, like you wake up and you make art every day, you know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you think of yourself as an artist, you know? And even though I kind of was telling myself I was an artist, it just took a little while for me to really like embrace that feeling, you know? So it was around that time that I kind of like was like, yo, you know what, you're right, like this is what I do, you know, like I wake up and I make art, like that's the definition of an artist, you know? Doesn't mean about like, because you're not making a sale, doesn't mean you're not an artist, you know? So I kind of started cultivating that mindset around that time. And this was probably like 7-8 years before I even sold my first piece with the gallery, you know? So going into that, I always knew that, and I think it also goes back to what I was saying about just the manifestation. Like, I had to continue always telling myself that for me to fully believe it and even get to these situations with the galleries, you know what I'm saying? So I kind of always saw myself as an artist after that point, back in like, you know, how many years ago? So by the time the galleries came around, I already knew that I was an artist. I just wanted, like, I guess, them to see that as well, you know?
Yeah, so what was that relationship like, or interaction in the start of it? Like, you're not traditionally trained
Yeah.
as like an artist,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So now you're dealing with galleries that are looking for fine arts majors and all of that. Was there any like anxiety during that moment, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, no, there's definitely anxiety in my mind. I mean, I still have the anxiety to this day, you know what I mean? Especially if it's like a new relationship with a gallery.
Right.
Kind of feeling like, you know, making sure I'm saying the right things, making sure that like I'm valuing myself and making sure that you know, make sure that I have as much leverage as I need in the situations, as opposed to, you know, not being from like typically the fine art, you know, MFA programs, you know, showing them my worth and making sure that they couldn't necessarily dim that light, you know. But you know, overall, I've had it for the like 90% of my gallery interactions have been solid, you know. So I haven't really had that many issues. I've been pretty. They've valued me and they've appreciated what I bring to the table. So I don't have too many horror stories with that. But I think the one thing for me was that realizing how much, when I started getting to the gallery world, how much like your schooling matters to a lot of galleries, you know. And speaking of, you know, friends that have been gone through MFAs, some love that they went through, some didn't, you know, enjoy it at all. But I think I can see why it benefits, you know, just like, you know, just like critiques and understanding the conversations around art and like the purpose and like what you've like your placement in history with it. And I try to do that on my own time and like learn about that history and understand that. So I always kind of put myself into that, but it was a shock to realize how much like, you know, schooling matters, you know, to a lot of these galleries and like MFA programs and whatnot. I've even considered doing MFA programs in the past. Still open to it, but I don't think it's 100% necessary for an artist, you know what I mean? And I didn't realize you need to have like a resume as an artist, you know, but a lot of galleries do appreciate that. And like I said, I guess I can kind of see why, but I don't think it's at all necessary, you know, so yeah.
What's one of the, I would say like one of the biggest, outside of that, like you don't think that let's say the schooling, for example, is necessary. What's one of the, like the biggest myths about the art world that you think you like debunked or you think just doesn't apply to what you're doing?
The myth about the art world. I don't know. I'd say maybe there's a myth that like if you're like showing at a gallery or represented by a gallery that like you're good. Like, you know, that like you made it, and you made it or something.
Right.
Because that's kind of like, in a way, I guess, I don't mean to disrespect any artists that are still striving for that, you know, because that is the goal, right? But well, you could still get there and things could still go like absolutely wrong, or you could not be appreciated, you could be represented and not given a show, you know, you could be, there's so many different situations that could happen. So I would say like, just because, you know, you got a gallery representation doesn't mean everything is like, you know, set and like you made it and you're good, you know, like the work just starts there, really. So I would say that was like the biggest thing. Maybe as a myth, I don't know if that really qualifies for that, but I don't really know any other myths. I mean, there's a lot of myths that probably are true, you know, that like are not false, you know, about the art world, about the movements of money and all that stuff, but we don't have to get into all that, you know. But yeah, the art world is like, it's a crazy, wild place, but and you learn more and more every day. But you know, for me, I think I'd like to be involved, but also keep a healthy distance, because a lot of the people that surround me aren't necessarily all artists. You know, I got some great artist friends, but like, you know, I just like. I like to keep a healthy distance from it because it could be kind of a crazy place, you know.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It's colorful.
It's colorful, yeah. It's a good way to put it.
It's colorful.
Yeah. It's a PC way to put it.
Yo, talk to me about your failures, man.
Sheesh, failures. What would be a failure of mine? I mean, I feel like continuing to do failures here and there, but I guess like what would a failure be is.
All right, and how do you deal with it? Like, how do you deal with failure? Like something comes up, you may not succeed at it, Or,
Okay.
you know, like
Yeah.
how do you feel, how you deal with that?
I mean, for me, it would be. I think I'm still struggling sometimes with it, but the main core of me always knows that like there's something great to come from failure. You know what I mean? I like to like go straight line, you know, beeline towards failure at times, or just attempt to succeed. And if I fail, you know, that's all right, because there's always some lesson to learn with that, you know. And if you don't fail, then I don't think you're really actually pushing yourself. You're really like exploring your talent or your situation to the depths that it needs to be. You know, like failure is such a normal thing that's gonna come around, like sometimes daily. You know, hopefully not daily, but you know, like it comes around so much, so often that it kind of goes hand in hand with success in a way. You know, as an artist, so. If you haven't failed, then I feel like you're probably not doing something right, you know, or something's a little bit off, you know. But for me, it's like the way I deal with it is just kind of just making sure that you could like see the failure, see what went wrong. Is it on you? Is it on another situation? And just keep like, you know, pushing forward. And you know, yeah, I try to like confront failure as face to face, you know, as much as possible, but easier said than done, obviously, you know. Like nothing's gonna always feel great when you fail. Like that stuff definitely stings, you know, especially if it's something you're really shooting for, striving for. But you know, maybe you're down for a day or two, a week, but like, you know, that you gotta like reevaluate and just bounce back is my number one thing, you know. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now tell me about your biggest success.
Biggest success, I would say just like, I don't know if I have one biggest success. I would say like the biggest moment maybe for me that was like a game changer for me was that 2020 residency. I probably have talked about this so many times, but it truly was.
You light up as you speak about it.
Yeah, because it was a game changing time. Like, you know, it's like it was during COVID, so I ended up 1 month residency ended up turning into a very long residency. It was like 5 months, I believe, and I was just, you know, we were kind of quarantined, so we had nothing to really do, and I had all the materials I needed at the residency, and from there on, it was just like, that's when I started getting like the gallery representation. Some galleries I have, a gallery I still have at work, a few galleries I still work with today, you know, from that residency. So, you know, it was just one of those like Kickstarter to everything, you know, especially after a few failed attempts with some galleries the years before that I was mentioning, and just having this come through, and then, you know, 5 years later, and I'm still working with some of the galleries. The gallery owner Danny First, the residency owner Danny First, still great friends with him. You know what I mean? Like just like not even business, we're just like a great personal relationship.
Yeah.
And I appreciated him for just like all the work he put into it and the value he saw of me, and continues to kind of, you know, champion me. So I would say that was probably the biggest success, because that paved the way for everything else that came.
Yeah. If you were to die today,
Sure. Hopefully I don't.
you won't.
But
But if
you
you
never
were-
know. But I think if I was to die today, wait, what was the sorry?
Yeah, no, that's, see, you're heading with it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it's like mortality is fleeting. We
Mhm.
spoke a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And it's just all around us all the time.
Yeah, for
And
sure,
we're
yeah.
blessed to
Mhm.
have the opportunity to see the other side of it,
Yeah.
right? To see
Mhm.
the next day.
Mhm.
Because, you know, when the sun goes down and we close our eyes, there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
How would you want to be remembered in this space? Like, what would you want to be remembered for?
You know, it's such an interesting question, because I think about that quite a bit, about like what is the purpose of what I'm doing, like what's gonna happen after me, you know what I mean? What is everything's gonna be spoke about? But I think the only thing I could think of is just that people see me as someone that was just dedicated, you know what I mean, to kind of searching for my own self-discovery through my work, and that my work, when it's looked at a broader scope, could represent that, you know, could show that like I was someone that was just searching to kind of understand myself to its completion, you know. Whether it's, especially a lot of works talking about, you know, American and Haitian culture, and like what that means for me, like especially from growing up here in the States and only visiting Haiti, and just knowing about Haiti through my family and stories and art and videos and photos and music, and kind of just understand like who I am as a person through that. And I think the biggest thing about for me in life is to understand who we are, you know what I mean? And for that, to understand that, we gotta kind of look to our past and like, and see where we've come from, even like from our ancestors to here. And I think that builds us like a strong footprint and idea of self, which a lot of times gets stripped away from us, through systematic situations. But I do believe that I hope my work could kind of show that I was fighting against that and trying to like search for that meaning.
Yeah. How do you define the culture? Like you're Haitian and you're American, right?
Yeah.
Both parents are from Haiti, but you're American, right? So how has merging the two cultures impact or influence the work that you've been able to produce over the years?
That's a great question. I think the main thing about it is kind of understanding is really kind of like tradition. I think is like the biggest thing that ties everything together, seeing like a lot of the American traditions, like, cause growing up, my household was very like, it's a very Caribbean household, and I think for me, it's like, from a lot of my friends that come from more of like, let's say a Black American background, and seeing just the ties of the traditions or the idea of tradition and how traditions kind of hold on to the stories of the past. I think I'm grateful for, at least sometimes, for Haitian history, we could trace back a lot of situations and like, lineages. But when you see in America, you can't really always have that direct line of lineage to trace back, and I think that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing is more just like throughout everything in the movements, just seeing all those different traditions that come along, understanding that for me is understanding that like there's like kind of I think Haitians also has such a rebellious and strong fighting history, you know what I mean, and kind of seeing that and implementing that into like the American culture and seeing how we could fight and strive for to fight against this like erasure of history. I think it's like the biggest combination and then other things too come from just like music and fashion. We can see how much the Caribbean culture has just affected a lot of like American, and like from music, what I mean, coming from Africa to the Caribbean, and then strictly through Latin America into the Americas, and gave birth to a lot of music that we listen to today, and kind of just seeing, I guess, the origins is the big part for me, and seeing how we got there. But yeah, but it's a continuous journey though. So hopefully I'll have even more of a that answer gets a little bit more defined as it, but definitely using this as kind of that scope. And I think the more, God willing, everything works out with Haiti, I could kind of go back a little bit more and kind of actually firsthand tap into that answering. Because right now it's all through really kind of like the few visits and stories, but as opposed to like, more of my stories on the American side, looking into Haiti, as opposed to being there, boots on the ground, feet on the ground, kind of understanding the culture like firsthand. I think that once that could happen, the answer and the story would develop even further.
But talk to me about your business, man. This is a business, right?
Yeah, it's a business.
Like, so what was that transition like for you to transition to, okay, I'm not just making beautiful photos or like beautiful collages and murals and just like on canvas. Now I have to sell stuff. Like what has that process been like?
You know what? Like it's I think that's like probably the harder part to deal with and kind of manage, is that knowing that sometimes art doesn't, you can't force things along, you know what I mean? You kind of have to let things organically show itself. So the hard part at times is maybe when having deadlines, you know what I mean, when it comes into the business for shows, and then you might not meet that deadline, you have to push the deadline back, or just having constraints on the practice, I think is the hardest part for me. and I'm trying to figure out a nice common ground where I could give myself the exact amount of time I need, as well as still like meeting the business deadlines that are given. So I think that's the hardest part, and also just kind of like, I think painting as an artist is kind of a solo sport, you know what I mean? Like I'm in this room kind of like trapping out, so it's like having that part where you kind of have to be that marketable person where you're kind of going to the openings, going to the dinners, I've always struggled with that because I'm more of like, stay inside type of guy. So I find myself, that's always been a kind of a struggle, and realizing, the right moments to step out and having to be like this marketing aspect of yourself, And even though I think like sometimes with art, maybe you don't really have to, or like this painting, you don't have to be such a huge person that's going out and marketing, but in a way you have to be able to be out there and getting your name out there. It's like the networking part. So I think that's probably the biggest struggle for me. That's probably, I would say networking. But like I say that, but at the same time, like I have made some like great connections and friends, but I think you got to like know the right moments to go step out, especially for me, it has to be meaningful, I have to be like stepping out with at least a few people that I have like a great bond with, and then things come from that, but just stepping out to step out hasn't always been my speed, and that's probably what maybe forms a bit of a struggle within the work, because you really do probably need to be outside a little bit more often to kind of expedite the growth, but you got to pick and choose your poison,
It sounds like so I do photography, right? And my friends, they bring me out and I'll take photos for them because they're influencers. So it's like taking pictures for you in the spaces to propel you, right? Like, because there's a whole ambiance that's around. Like you bring a photographer, taking photos, blah blah blah. So I've realized that when I step in spaces and my hands are free, without my camera, the conversation is definitely different.
Okay,
because you're not seen as like a service provider,
I see.
but you're seen as like you appear as a human being, right?
I see, okay.
So when you step out, you automatically step out as an artist, but are you Matt the artist? Are you know what I'm saying? Like, are you different people, and how do you figure out who you want to be at the moment when you're outside? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Like, is that one of the reasons that you don't step out all the time?
No, it's not.
Different hats?
No, not even so much. I mean, like, I guess there is like ideas of like you're wearing the different hats for me, but I kind of always just step out. I try to step out, even in the art settings. I'm kind of just try to be the same person. I don't feel like I think the only time I switch up is depending on like maybe the scenario, if I'm going to like a dinner, collector's house or something like that, maybe I'll be a little bit more, maybe it's a little bit more informative of a situation where I'm just preparing myself as an artist to be, maybe just talk about like my work, and just kind of be on like those P's and Q's, but overall I feel like I kind of step out even in just work and personal setting the same way every time, just like as myself. And I think I am my work in a way, so like every time I go somewhere, even if it has nothing to do with my work, I'm still that same person. And unfortunately I'm probably still thinking of work, while I'm there anyway. So I don't think I switch between too many hats, at least consciously, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I don't know. It's a good question though. But maybe it's a switch that I don't realize that I'm doing,
Realize.
Yeah.
So I guess it means to me to talk about your confidence and your manifestation of the life, right? Like, where do you get your confidence from?
I would say the confidence, oh man, depending on the day, but I would say the confidence comes for like, I truly believe in my work. Like, I love my work, and I don't think I'm crazy, so I feel like the work, like if I enjoy it as much as I do, there's got to be a handful of people out there that enjoy it, you know. So I think the confidence with that, and I know the amount of work I put into it, and I truly believe in putting, if you put energy towards something, you know, it's, you know, energy is not destroyed, you know. So I feel like it's going to kind of manifest its ways and displace its ways in different ways, in different scenarios. But so I think I'm just confident about what I could produce. I'm not saying every day I go in the studio I'm gonna make a great piece, you know. It's quite the opposite, you know. But I know that I'm gonna continue always striving for that, and I'm always gonna, like, you can see in the studio there's different voices, you know. It's not like all one specific styles, because I'm always trying to challenge myself, and I'm using them as each as like this self-discovery. So I have confidence that I will continue to always push myself. I think that's what gives me the confidence. But you know, like, some days are better than the other, you know. Sometimes you could try to apply to a certain position or like certain residencies and get denied, and that could be like kind of a hit, you know. But I've gotten denied to so many things at this point where, you know, I just kind of have to, like, I think it doesn't even like affect me that much anymore, you know. I just gotta, like, you know, maybe it's not the right time or stuff, but I think it's just like, yeah, the amount of work I put towards it has to, you know, equate to something, you know. So yeah.
Manifestation. You said you're
yeah.
a big believer of manifestation.
I am.
When did you start? How have you seen it work? Or if you could recall the first thing that you manifested consciously, right? Because I think we manifest things and they just happen, but we're not really paying attention to the intention that we've applied or what we the ask. It's just we just turn around and it's there.
Yeah.
So when you were first intentional, do you recall the first thing that you manifested?
That I manifested?
Or something recent?
Yeah. No, to be honest with you, my manifestation has been a little off. The meter's been a little off. I think it's because I've been, like I was telling you, just like things going on in personal life has been kind of clouding it a little bit. So I think my manifestation recently hasn't been as strong as it has been in the past, because my mind's been other places. But I've been trying to slowly get back to it more and more. I'm trying to manifest like this series to be at, like, you know, a great gallery, you know. Hopefully that could like work out. But I can tell you where the manifestation started was I was in end of my schooling, and someone told me about a book. It was another painter actually told me about a book, or this excerpt from a book. It was like As a Man Thinketh, James Allen, you know. And like, it's like, I guess some people would say that it's like, it was a self-help book. Maybe it is, but like, I really at the time, I needed to read that, you know. And it just kind of really showed me that, you know, that I am who I want to be today, and there's nothing that really changes that besides like the distance and time, you know. So that kind of really helped change my mindset, and it kind of I just locked in from there. And I think for me, it's just like even working at different places, and I used to work at this place called Milk Studios back in the day when it used to be in Chelsea. And I remember like there was a gallery department there, and I was like manifesting like, man, I would love to show there, you know. Like at the time I was like, oh, this is like top gallery, you know, like this is just like a good opportunity, you know. And that kind of, you know, I always put the energy towards that, and then I ended up being able to like sell prints of my work through them at one point. And then and just things, I think that might have been like the first manifestation, because that was like maybe a few years after I started really doing it. But I don't even know if at the time I realized that it was a manifestation, but I'm just trying to like think of moments. But yeah, it's like just a continuous practice, I guess, you know. Yeah, nothing I can fully think of at the moment. There was I really wanted to do something with a clothing brand, you know, at one point. And I was trying to think of all these different ones, and there was this one brand, and I don't want to say because it didn't end up working out, but the fact that I ended up getting in the room with them and having meetings with them was really cool. And then it ended up flourishing into a whole different situation, you know, with like a separate company that these people worked with. So so I think things like that kind of show itself, little moments, you know what I mean? Like, oh, making these works, like I'm like, oh, these works, like I'm gonna make, person asks for one work, but I'm gonna make like these 3 and show them, because I feel like they're gonna either want 2 or all 3. and like things like that happening. But those are like, you know, those little things. And I don't like to put the manifestation so much into like a tangible moment,
Right.
but more so just
Right.
like the energy put out of like, you know, positivity of the trajectory of the craft, you know. I think that's where the manifestation comes, and knows that like things will be all right and things will work out, as opposed to a specific moments.
Yeah.
Though I know manifestation kind of sometimes works in those specific tangible
Right.
things, but I think the majority of the times for me it's been more about the direction, you know what I mean, the upwards mobility that's showed itself, you know, things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess if there are 3 steps, if you could give 3 steps to manifestation,
3
like
steps.
what would be like or number 1 or just one?
I say the first step would be to understand that manifestation probably could work for the better and for the worse, you know? So putting all those energies towards the positive aspects that you're trying to reach is key. But I would say the first step would for me was implementing it day by day. You know what I mean? That's the hardest part. Doing one thing the next day that was a little bit more than the day before was a big thing for me. There was this quote, and I've said it in the past, but I think I'm gonna mess it up. But it was kind of just like pretty much like being superior is being better than your former self.
Yes.
Definitely messed that up. Might have been, I think it's Ernest Hemingway quote, but is like that was my biggest thing. And I think at the time when I first started, I knew that like even if I was like tired or like I didn't really want to do anything, as long as I just did, if I just like went and I like made one draft, you know what I mean, on the days I didn't want to do anything, that was just like one step better than like my former self. You know what I mean? So that was my first step of just like thinking positive and just making sure I'm implementing these like physical steps that I could take towards like building up to the craft, which was my manifestation, like becoming a great artist. So to do that was to make sure that each day I'm showing up for myself, or showing up for the craft. And like that one big step, one like extra step could just be like organizing, you know what I mean? Like cleaning up your space or whatever the case might be, you know, just like making sure I did that each day. And yeah, I think that was the biggest part. Yeah.
That's beautiful, bro. If you can thank the people who have been like influential, impactful, dead or alive,
Okay.
give some thank yous. Give some shout outs to some people.
Well, the easiest one for me is like, you know, thanking some of my family members that like were just always like just moral support, you know what I'm saying? Like I have my parents and my like brothers always been a big supporter, you know, kind of giving you like the energy you needed, you know, to kind of, you know, they were into it, so you got like, oh wow, like okay, this is cool, like, you know, just having that moral, you know, verbal support was always great, and emotional support as well. I had some aunts too that were just still continue to just be a huge like support, you know, and just like keeping me going, and just especially in the beginning, you know, just like making sure I was alright, you know, like sending me some bread if I had no money for like some paint, you know, and things like that. And so it was special thanks to them, because they were like full on probably the best support I could have had at the time. And then what else was there? I would like to thank some of like the artists, you know. I always shut down when like I have to think of the artists that I really impact my art, and there's so many of them, or not so many, but there's definitely a decent amount. Just like kind of like the ones that like struggled with a lot of, you know, adversity, especially in the times, you know, especially back in the day, even more so, and being able to kind of leave us with your work and show us, give us continuous inspiration maybe 40-50 years after you're passed on, is kind of impressive, and something I would kind of just like hope, you know, I could do, you know, for others. And just, yeah, like a special thanks to just the people, like let's say the work relationships I've had that continue to support me, even though I stray from like what they think I should, maybe the path I should have kept going or continued to work in, you know, the ones that kind of just like, just continue to support and like wholeheartedly like believe in what I'm doing as an artist, you know. And I think they know who they are. So yeah, I would say those are
Drop
those.
some names, bro.
Huh?
Drop the names.
No, I don't got the names right now. I don't got the names right now. But they know who they are for sure. But yeah, just special thanks to everybody for sure.
So, what has all of that meant to you? Like, what has, like, when you think about the people that you just thanked, I'm sure you got goosebumps just thinking about some of those moments.
Yeah.
What did all of that mean?
Yeah, I think the thing that meant for me was just that, like, I wasn't crazy, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like if you're by yourself a lot and just working on paintings, especially with these like chemical fumes.
Yeah, like that's
I know, once you walked in, I know, I got chemical filters.
Especially when you sit in here and like for a little moment.
Yeah, you get a little dizzy. I know, but I got 2 chemical VOC filters, so to like relieve you a little bit of the worry. It's like I got some chemical filters here.
I'm not worried, bro.
But no, I know, I'm just joking. But I would say to just know that I'm not like crazy, you know, that like I'm not just like some madman that just enjoy my living in like some delirious place where I'm just like love my work and think it should deserve its attention. And that I think that's the biggest support I could have had, just to know I'm not alone in this. It's like goes so much further than like anything they can, you know, monetarily provide me with. Just knowing that support's there keeps me going 100%. Yeah. So,
I love that, bro. I guess I've had one last question, right? How do you give back?
How do I give back? Man, to be honest, I feel like in the past I've done a decent amount by like donating, you know, that's like one thing I could do. I would like to figure out ways I can donate my actual time as opposed to just like funds. But I've been kind of trapped out in a little bit, so like I would love to kind of maybe work with, especially some of the youth, you know, some youth programs would be great. I know I never thought about like art as a career path as a kid, you know, even though I've seen it like in a way around me, but I never thought that for myself. So if I could like show some, you know, some like young youths that like, you know, that this is a possibility and you can not even if you don't want to do this for work, like this is a great outlet, you know what I mean? If you're like struggling with anything to kind of put that energy into, it's a great outlet and a release. So I would love to work with some youth programs, would be great. I've been saying that for years. I just gotta actually, you know, like figure that out. And yeah, I think that would be probably the best way to give back at the moment. And just give an open platform for people to kind of really, you know, feel safe within a space, you know, because this is my safe space.
Feel safe.
I would love to be able to, like, we were talking about Haiti, be able to give back to that country in any form, you know. It would be really cool to kind of have it, even like a residency there at some point, you know, on the land that I was telling you about, and just kind of bringing that community and that art, international art, to that place. Because I mean, people don't realize like how much Haitian art has impacted the world. I mean, like surrealism, Andre Breton, like when he was writing about the Surrealist Manifesto, like he was studying and he was in love with the Haitian surrealist painters, you know, and artists. So, you know, you think of like Dali and all these like big surrealist artists, Ernst and all these people, but like you don't really hear so much about like, you know, some of the Haitian surrealist artists, you know. It's just one of those situations I think that would be nice to kind of bring international art and understanding to that community, not just for the outside world to see, but also for like the country to be able to have that introduction to just other different arts, you know what I mean, and kind of have that access, I guess, really firsthand to it would be pretty cool. So I think that's something that I've always wanted to do. Don't know how I could actually put that together yet, but at some point it would be really nice, you know, especially when things like kind of like, you know, settle up a little bit over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And any final words for the people? I don't even know.
Any final? Yeah, no. I would say like, you know, just like be your truest self, you know, like I know that sounds like a Hallmark card, but truly, like, you know, don't let other situations or other outside don't search for that outside validation, you know, like really figure out ways to kind of find that within yourself. I think that's like the number one thing, and understand who you are, especially in this world right now, which is crazy, of people just like histories just being erased. Just like kind of understand who you are and stay true with that, you know, and like always stay grounded within yourself, because the world is just going to continue to just like change and get chaotic around us. All we have is like our inner selves, you know, so just focus in on that.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, I got you, bro. Thank you.
Yeah.